Now, let's take a tree in summer. We work it exactly the same way, except this time, oh, could be a bit greener than that. But what we are doing, we're putting leaves on now in roughly the same way. Let's go darker now. That's a bit better. And it's the same brush strokes coming in the form that leaves grow or fall on the tree. They're sort of in little umbrellas, and we're sort of continuing round. I've gone darker in there, where we're getting a sort of all round the trunk, and it gets all sort of buried in there, and the brush is great. See, do you see the branches, or the leaves, the way that they're going out in that direction? I'm leaving those. I rather like branches that are left, because you can't fill a tree up with leaves, or otherwise it looks like a bit of pudding or plasticine or something. You've always got some branches showing through. And around the trunk area down here, and then perhaps a little bit of leaves all coming down. Oh, we must put in the ground, because obviously that positions the tree for us. Even in a little exercise like this, I want to know where the ground is, because then it settles the tree and I can see what's happening. I think it does need one or two more branches in. Whoops, nearly dropped the brush. One or two more branches in, just going into or underneath the foliage. Now, this way, obviously, you'll find is easy when you've got dry paint underneath, but when you're painting it wet, when you've got wet paint underneath, you'll have to learn the feel of it to know how much weight to put on the brush to drag these colours over the top. But that really comes from practice. And the more you practice, obviously, the more you're going to get to know when you can work over wet paint and how to work over wet paint. But it can be done, and it's just a case of knowing what the paint is like underneath and how to apply it on top and how much pressure to. You see, that's a nice little branch. How much pressure to apply. And if we wanted to put something in, we could put a bit of fence there just to help to show the scale. Now, they are quick ways of doing a tree. When I say quick, I've done them quick, but I couldn't really do it much slower because of the style that I did or the technique that I used. But it's a technique I want you to get used to, and then you can apply that to painting or copying trees from outside. Once you've got the feel of a tree by working like this, they can be applied at different distances within your painting, and at least you've got something to work on and something to go at. Now, let's take these posts and assume that they're on water. Now, this white paper, which is sketching paper, doesn't look like water, of course, but it shows you how a reflection can make something give or have the illusion of water. So, all I'm going to do under this first post is just to paint another post. Now, that is like the top one. And if you look at that, you could, let's just straighten that a little bit more up there, just a bit closer. You could look at that and say, well, it could be water. But one of the nicest things that we can do with a reflection to give it that feeling of reflection is to give it movement in the water, because the waves or the ripples do give movement. And this is where, remember the clouds? I'm a cloud, I'm a cloud. This is where you're water, and you've got to let the brush just flow. So here we go, and we just let it come down all nice and breaking where it breaks. Just add a bit more on there. And now we've got a reflection that's broken with water, with the movement of water. And that starts to look like a reflection now, and as though this could be water, although, of course, it's only white paper. Now, when we've got a post, or in this case a post, but any reflection is always at the opposite angle to what it is in real life. So if a post is going left, then a reflection goes that way, underneath. Always do an imaginary run. Do your brush that way, and then it goes that way. And whatever it is, whether it's a building or whatever, you can always do the imaginary run first, and then you know which way to go. It's easy to forget, or not to forget, but just to go the wrong way. So to put a reflection in from here, we know we're breaking it, of course, and we know we're going in that direction and not in that direction or even straight down. It is the opposite angle to what the post is. The other thing that we can do, just to make this look a bit more like water, is to add blue with it. Of course, when I say blue, it will be the colour of the water itself. Sometimes water is brown, it's dirty, sometimes it's completely blue because it's reflected the sky. But I've just got a blue which simply shows, and you can see the colour, and then you can run up and paint your colour up to this. Remember, this could be dry because that's the reflection, because you could have actually painted that in originally with your Terpsy wash when you was putting in the underpainting, and you could in fact leave it. But the other way, as I say, is simply, and then you would paint this up without any trouble. But this is wet, so I'm having to paint up pretty close to it so that I'm not smudging it too much, but it doesn't matter if it does. Look, I'm doing it on purpose there, can you see? Look, and now it's just getting that lovely edge. Look, you see, just smudging up to it, and in fact it's getting that feeling of a reflection coming out of the water. Now, on top of all that, you can just take it a stage further if you like and put a little bit of the blue going across, just breaking it there, and that again just helps to make it look more like water. But remember that a reflection itself is the thing that really helps to make water appear water. And it is an illusion, painting's an illusion, and this is what we go for. Well, they were simple reflections, but we do obviously get more complicated reflections, like the particular one I've got here. Now, we've got the buildings, it's a harbour scene, and we've got buildings above, and of course it's all reflected into the water underneath. So let's have a go. Now, I've mixed some paint, and the first thing, what I have done, by the way, as you can see, I've drawn pencil lines just to give me a guide as to where the buildings are or will be reflected in the water. So the first stage is simply to paint in this dark area along here. Perhaps I'm being a bit too dark, but it doesn't worry me. Incidentally, all reflections are darker in the water. They tend to be darker in the water. I'm leaving that area there because that is light, that will be reflected light. I painted over that, so I'll just leave a bit there so I remember. And then we come down. And the first thing that I mustn't do, I'm going to leave those, I'll paint those over the top. I mustn't get too fussy in the first stages because it will make the whole painting be tight. Now, one other area of dark I want to get in, I want to put in the windows and the doors, which are reflected down here. So I'm going to have a bluey mix. Incidentally, this is reasonably wet, this paint. Right, I put all the windows in. Incidentally, I could have put this bit in here, this reflection from this wall, while I was doing this over here, but I got under the windows and didn't do it, but it could have gone in at the same time. The windows took about 3 minutes to put in, just to give you a clue as to how long it does take. Now, this yellow ochre house comes down here. Yes, I was wondering whether it was going to be a little dark, but I think we're all right with that. Now, I want to put it in, I mustn't forget I'm painting water, and so I've got to get the feeling of it. Remember, I can go over anything I like after painting it in the first time, and if I want to paint a bit more character into the windows as though they're waves, then I will do that after I've filled the whole area in. That's the whole area of the water. Right, I've just finished that the reflection of the white or the pink house there. And incidentally, I've used a larger brush for this. You can see it's larger, but it's simply because there's a bigger area to cover and it makes life easier and quicker. And after all, when we're outside, speed is important. Now, I've painted in the roofs all along here, and I've painted and continued with the white buildings over here, or the pinky grey buildings. So it's sort of all painting. You just carry on, and it might be a bit boring, but don't worry about it being boring. You've just got to fill everything in to start with, but you know what you're building up to. You're building up to something that's really going to work. So as you paint it all, it doesn't take a long time, by the way. It's only taken me about 15 minutes to do that. Now, there's the reflection of all the trees and hill which were behind all these houses. Remember, we're just run 1 or 2 in. We're water, painting water, so we've got to think water and be water. Now that's a nice little area, that, you see. It's got a feeling of water. I'm changing the colour slightly. I'm going a bit darker there. And again, I'm going to break into this so that we get a nice changeover from the dark to the lighter reflection. This is where you start to look for, if you like, the downstrokes. See, I've got the blue boat. Let's put that boat in now. There's the reflection I've got to put in. And now this is where we really start to make it look like water, or more like water. We've got reflection from those 2 sails. So I'm going to put those in. And this isn't really being fussy, it isn't being fiddly, because these are important parts to make it into water. We've got the dark side of these, just put a bit more dark on there, that's it, that's nice. There's a shadow side there on this post that runs into here, then from the top, and that continues up there like that. Very subtle. Remember, I've said all along that painting is subtle. They're all subtle things, but they are all things that make a painting. Right, I'm happy, I think. Doesn't that spot look lovely? Isn't it gorgeous, that spot where we've got simple water reflected with the 2 masts and the sail? I think that works really well. But look at the picture as a whole. I mean, that works. It could be more complicated if I worked on it. Now, I won't say complicated. Let's say I could put more work on it if I wanted, but there's no need. I could have done it simpler. This is the beauty of painting. We can make it simpler, or we can make it look more complicated. But as far as I'm concerned, that works, and I hope from that you can see how you can work your reflections. Now, I've taught you how to paint skies, figures in landscape, trees and water with reflections, of course. You're on your way now. Now, don't forget you must practice. And when you practice, you'll get used to it, you'll be more happy with it, and you'll do better paintings, and you'll thoroughly enjoy it. But one thing, when you find your own style is coming out, let it develop. You're the artist. I hope I've helped you towards that real goal of painting a fabulous oil painting.
Now available to buy. Try these techniques at home whenever you wish. The extended DVD of today's workshop is now available from the Painting and Drawing channel. For further information and to order your copy, go to www.paintingdrawingchannel.com.